She built a $60 million empire from a $500 loan. At 95, the family she made rich decided she was finished. 3 months later, she opened a rival store across the street, and Warren Buffett bought that one too. Her name was Rose Blumkin. They called her Mrs. B.
I'm going to give you a bag of VSQ $9.95. My price is $6.50.
$6.50?
They don't have fashion floor, my prices.
Okay,
They don't have the stock and they don't have the looks.
At 23, she crossed Siberia alone. No passport, no English, no plan. She arrived in America with $66 in her pocket and built the largest furniture store in the country without ever learning to read. At 95, they pushed her out. They thought it was the end. They were wrong. Rose Blumkin was born in 1893 in a small village in the Russian Empire, in the region that is now Belarus. Her father was a rabbi. Her mother ran a small grocery store to feed 8 children. From the age of 6, Rose worked beside her mother.
One night, I woke up 6 o'clock, she was mixing bread. I said, I can't stand that, you work awful hard. When I'll grow up, I'll go to a big town and find a job, make money and go to America.
At 13, she walked barefoot 18 miles to find a job. Rejected 25 times, she kept knocking. On the 26th try, someone let her in. By 16, she was managing the store. No school, no diploma, no connections, just the ability to see what people needed and give it to them honestly. In 1917, Russia was collapsing. For Jewish families, it was becoming dangerous. Rose was 23. Her husband had already escaped to America. She needed to follow him, but she had no passport. She crossed Siberia alone. At one point, a border guard stopped her cold. She looked him in the eye, told him she was buying leather for the army, said she'd bring him vodka on the way back. He let her through. She arrived in Seattle with $66 in her pocket. No English, just a tag around her neck with an address in Iowa. The Red Cross moved her there. 2 years later, she and her husband settled in Omaha, Nebraska. For years, they ran a used clothing store together. Rose watched the city, watched what people needed, watched what they couldn't afford. In 1937, she borrowed $500 from her brother Simon, took a train to Chicago, came back with $2,000 worth of furniture, $500 cash, $1,500 on credit, set it up in the basement of her husband's shop. 3 rules, her entire philosophy: sell cheap, tell the truth, don't cheat nobody. The same day she opened, a competitor launched down the street. They had an orchestra, Hollywood celebrities, a parade. Rose had a 3-line newspaper ad. Within a few years, that competitor was gone. Rose was still there. She charged 10% markup. Everyone else charged 50%. Competitors called her crazy, said she'd go bankrupt, said she didn't understand business. Then they stopped laughing and started fighting. Manufacturers were told, don't sell to her. Banks were told, don't lend to her.
How do you feel about the people who didn't sell to you in the beginning?
I still hate it. You know, anybody that does you dirty, you should never forgive and forget.
She traveled to Kansas City, Chicago, New York, found other suppliers, still undersold everyone. Then they dragged her into court, claimed her prices violated the law, said selling that cheap should be illegal. She stood in that courtroom, a woman who could not read the documents in front of her, surrounded by lawyers and executives in suits. She won every single case. At the end of one trial, after she proved her prices worked, the judge walked over and bought $1,400 worth of carpet from her. But there was one moment early on that tells you everything. Cash ran out. Suppliers were threatening. She needed to pay her debts immediately, so she walked through her own home and sold everything in it. The sofas, the chairs, the rugs, every piece of furniture she owned, gone, so her creditors would be paid in full and her customers would never be let down. She slept in an empty house that night and came back to work the next morning. The decades passed, 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, her listed hobby, driving around Omaha, checking competitors' prices. By the 1980s, Nebraska Furniture Mart was the largest single-location furniture store in America, over $100 million in annual sales. Rose was 90 years old and still personally selling carpet every day. Warren Buffett had been watching for a long time. In 1983, he came to see her. He walked in, looked around, and in minutes decided. No accountants, no lawyers, no audit. One question, "Mrs. B, do you owe any money?" She said no. That was enough. A $60 million deal, sealed with one question and a handshake. And in his letter to shareholders, he wrote, "Put her up against the top graduates of the top business schools or chief executives of the Fortune 500, and, assuming an even start with the same resources, she'd run rings around them." Rose cashed the check and came back to work the next day. 6 years passed. Her grandsons had taken on leadership roles at the store, and one day they made a major decision about the carpet department. Her department, without asking her, without consulting her, without even telling her first. Think about what that means. These were boys who grew up inside her store, who watched her stand in courtrooms, who watched her sell furniture out of her own house to pay her debts, who watched her build something from $500 into a company worth tens of millions of dollars. They watched all of it. And then, at 95, they decided she no longer belonged there. "I got mad and quit," she said. No tears, no long goodbye. She walked out of the company she had spent 52 years building. Everyone thought that was the end. 3 months later, she opened a new store right across the street. Same model, same prices, same rules, the same woman, now competing directly against her own grandsons. They used their size to pressure her suppliers. She went international, found new sources. At 95, most people need rest. She opened a business. By 1991, 2 years in, her new store was profitable and growing. Warren Buffett watched from a distance, realized his mistake. He'd let her leave without a non-compete agreement. In 1992, he bought her new store too, paid $4.94 million, folded it back into Nebraska Furniture Mart. His verdict, "I'd rather wrestle grizzlies than compete with Mrs. B." She kept coming in every day on a motorized scooter when her legs slowed down, at 101, at 102, at 103, she finally stopped. Nebraska Furniture Mart quietly set their official retirement age at 103. Because of her, every year Warren Buffett sent students from 40 universities to spend a day at her store. Not at Harvard, not at Goldman Sachs, at her store. If they absorb Mrs. B's lessons, he wrote, they need none from me.
I'm the best operator, not I'm bragging, in the country with common sense. I don't know education, books, percentage. I use the old-fashioned way.
Rose Blumkin died in 1998. She was 104 years old. She never learned to read, never wrote a business plan, never gave a speech at a university. She just showed up every day for over 60 years. She crossed Siberia alone at 23. She stood in court at 60 and won. At 95, her own family decided she was finished. She opened a new store. They thought 95 was the end. For Rose Blumkin, it was just another beginning.
You can give advice. Everything is in you. God blessed me. I had a talent. Anything I done, I made money.
If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because stories like hers should never be forgotten.